It is Thursday night, 7 p.m. So you know what that means. It is time for my weekly YouTube live. My name is Gino D'Angelo. I'm a local Northern Michigan real estate agent who specializes in helping people retire, relocate, buy a second home, live in Northern Michigan. And I make videos once a week. They come out on Sunday that tell about hidden gems, secrets, areas to look at, areas to avoid, and everything you need to know in the most honest way possible about relocating to Northern Michigan. So thank you for joining me. Whether you're watching this live or the replay, thank you for being here. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you do so because we've got a good one tonight. We're going to talk about all I put a post on Facebook and Instagram earlier in the week asking questions that people had about living in Northern Michigan. And a lot of these questions also came from the comments that I get on the videos. So as we go through these questions tonight, and there's a bunch of them, so I usually stick on for about an hour. If we need to go over, we can certainly go over. Again, my name is Gino D'Angelo. I'm a local in Northern Michigan real estate agent. Drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. I like to know where our viewers are tuning in from. I like to know where our reach is reaching. You know, we've helped people from Germany. We've helped people from California. We've helped people from Florida and everywhere in between. So again, this is meant to be an interactive experience. If you have a question about anything we talk about, anything we talked about last week, I know a lot of you come on week after week. And I think that's what really makes this community special is I've gotten to know a lot of you. I've helped a lot of you buy houses. I've answered a lot of questions. We've met, we haven't met. But I really enjoy these live style YouTube videos because it gives me the opportunity to talk directly to you and answer questions based on what's actually on your mind versus the videos we make that we spend a lot of time on, and we come up with topics and do a lot of research and make great videos that we think are going to be beneficial to anybody that's interested in retiring in Northern Michigan, relocating to Northern Michigan, or maybe you're just dreaming about coming to Northern Michigan. But either way, I hope this channel adds some value to your life and makes the process a little bit easier. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Make sure, drop a question, comment in the question, let me know where you're from, and we're going to come back and go through a couple of the questions. I feel like this is timely because as I say this every week, but as we get into the season and every week that passes, we learn more and more. We start to unravel, you know, the ball of what the 2025 season is going to be like in Northern Michigan. Obviously, I've talked about this a lot of times. We went from pretty good summer last year into, you know, election uncertainty, then the election, and then one of the hardest winters in Northern Michigan in my memory. And we had the ice storm, which a lot of you are either familiar or unfamiliar with. So we've really only been into the spring market for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that means every time I come on here, these videos I've learned a little bit more. And what I like about doing these live videos is I can tell you exactly what's going on in the market versus what I think is going to go on, or maybe somebody that doesn't, you know, is giving you advice that doesn't actually know what's going on in the Northern Michigan market. But again, every week as we get closer to spring, I remember in the wintertime when I started doing these live broadcasts, I would get to the studio super early and I'd have like 2 hours to eat some food, do some more research, you know, check on the market. But now our days are so jam packed that, you know, I have to block time in my schedule earlier in the week to research these because I know that when 7 o'clock on Thursday hits, I'm going to be coming in for another appointment. So we've got a bunch of listings we just put on the market. We're helping a bunch of buyers. And it's really, I think the best way to describe the market right now, and we'll get into this with some of the questions. The best way to describe the market right now is the tale of two markets. I feel like there's certainly one market, but there's multiple markets that make up that market. And it's interesting that we're seeing people get $20,000, $30,000 under listing price offers accepted. And then we're seeing people have to pay $20,000 or $30,000 over list price. I do think right now, and of course I'm biased, and I'm not the only one, there's a lot of great realtors who have been around a long time. And I think now more than ever, who you work with matters. And if you're watching this because you want to loosely interview me, or you're wondering if I'd be a good fit for you, I've been doing this for 22 years. I've seen every type of market there was. I'm not somebody who's just been, not that there's anything wrong with this. I'm not somebody who just got in this during COVID and rode the hot market and now is struggling a little bit. I've seen it all. I've helped people through every situation imaginable. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that I think that I'm helping my clients right now navigate a tough market and helping them win. Look, it's all I can do is give them the advice, and a lot of them are taking it and they are making good decisions. And I'm having a lot of success with both buyer and sellers accomplishing their goals and being extremely happy at the end of the process. So again, if you're looking for a resource in Northern Michigan, even if you're not looking, it starts with you looking for a resource, which is why I hope you come here. And hopefully one day, if you need a realtor, you'll give me a shot and give myself and my team a shot. So Frank V says you could have 5 houses that are exactly the same on 5 different lakes and the price lease. That's absolutely correct, Frank. That's something a lot of people don't want. And I think that's good news, bad news, Frank. Thank you again for watching every week. You add a lot of value to the channel, and the questions you ask are make my life easier because you ask intelligent questions and I'm just able to answer them. Yeah, we're doing an episode next week on how far your money goes, or what price, what type of lake, what type of lifestyle you can get on the water at what price point. We have lakes in Northern Michigan where you can buy a house for $200,000. Now it's going to be a small lake. It's probably going to be a little bit more rural. The house is probably going to be a little bit smaller. And then we have listings right now on the MLS that are 10 million, 50 million, sometimes $20 million, which I think is incredible for Northern Michigan. I remember not that long ago, a house selling for $10 million in Northern Michigan was unheard of. And I don't want to say it's super common now, but there's a lot more of those houses out there as more and more wealthy people choose Northern Michigan as their landing spot, or at least one of their landing spots. But if you want to be on the water in Northern Michigan and have some flexibility, no matter what your budget is, we can likely get you on the water. And I'm glad Frank brought that up because we're going to do a whole live on that next week. But he's right. There can be 5 different lakes. And look, they can be, I'll give my area, Petoskey, for example. We've got Walloon Lake, Walloon, Torch Lake, 2 of the most expensive lakes in the state, in the Midwest, maybe even the country. Then we've got smaller lakes like Susan Lake in Charlevoix, or Black Lake in Onaway, Sheboygan. You've got Paradise Lake up in Carp Lake. Then you've got in the middle, you've got Burt Lake and Mullet Lake, which have also gotten a little bit more expensive. So you're talking anywhere from, $5-10 million to $300,000 to $500,000. And I remember not that long ago, we don't talk about this as much because it's not as much of a hot lakefront property value skyrocketing isn't as much of a hot button topic as homes that first time home buyers are going to buy, just because, obviously there's a little bit more drama behind that. But lakefront property in Northern Michigan has gotten expensive. I remember on Burt Lake, which is a lake I grew up on, spending a lot of time on. I remember not that long ago, I was selling houses for $250,000, $300,000. Now those same houses are $800,000, $900,000, $1 million. And it's almost like the trickle down effect when you look at Torch Lake, Lake Charlevoix, Walloon Lake. Those are like the premier lakes. And as those get more expensive, it pulls the other lakes up to them, because I've had people that, were looking on Walloon Lake forever, wanted to buy, they waited too long, prices skyrocketed there, and suddenly they're on Burt Lake because the prices are less. And vice versa, people that wanted to be on Burt Lake and waited too long, now they're on Black Lake. So it's sort of most people that are looking for, it's like when I say, when somebody goes to the bank, they're not buying a purchase price, they're buying a mortgage payment. And that's the same thing with the lakes. They say, I've got a $500,000 budget. Which lake does that get me on? I've got $1 million budget. Which lake does that get me on? And I think that's it's definitely an interesting circumstance. For those of you wondering, I'm drinking Topo Chico. This is not beer. I gave up alcohol for Lent, and I think I'm going to stick with it because I don't know. I feel like being alcohol free makes a lot of things in my life a lot easier. So there's a little personal note for the night. So the first question I have, and again, as I go through these, let me know if you have any questions. These lives are more fun for everybody when we get some audience involvement. So please ask questions. Even if you think it's a silly question, I promise there's probably somebody else out there watching it either live or going to watch the replay that have a similar question. How is the market in Northern Michigan right now? I just spoke to it a little bit. The market in Northern Michigan right now I think it's strong. I do think it's fickle. I would say it's strong and it's fickle. That's the best way to describe the market in Northern Michigan right now. There is still a ton of demand, but it does feel like a lot of those buyers are pushing back on some of the prices. And I don't know if they just don't feel the value's there, or it's because the interest rates are so high, making their payment a lot higher. But we put a house on the market last week and we had only 5 showings, but all 5 wrote offers. So it seems like the buyers that are out there, and that the property ended up going for way over asking. It seems like the buyers that are out there are motivated, but they're not just saying, take my money like they did a couple of years ago. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic. Second question I got is, are home prices going up or down in Northern Michigan? I would say they're leveling. I don't believe they're still going up. You would think if something's either going up or going down. And I think if you look at leveling, maybe they're going down a tick. The type of homes that were, the price of the house is really a factor of the demand. And if I were to answer this more in depthly, I would say the houses that are move-in ready, that do not need any work, that are in great locations, are still selling at a premium. So I think those values are still going up, but I think a lot of values are leveling and maybe even coming down a little bit. Is it a buyer or seller's market up north? I would say, again, it's both. I think we're in a really interesting time right now. I think in certain instances, it's a buyer's market. I think in other instances, it's a seller's market. And I think the client actually has the ability to determine whether this is a buyer's market or a seller's market. And write this down if you're taking notes. I know I've had some people say they take notes when they watch these. Pay attention to this. If you're a buyer, you can make your unique situation a buyer's market by going after homes that have been on the market for 30, 60, 90 days. Those are the homes that we are seeing the biggest discounts on, because the realtor, whoever priced their property, if it's been on the market 30, 60, 90 days, they priced it too high. And that is the best buying. I was just had a conversation before I hopped on the live tonight with a client saying, look, he's been somebody that's been looking for a good deal for a while. And I said, we are starting to see good deals. I don't know if this is going to last. I don't know if this is just the start of the good deals, but right now in certain instances, we are seeing good deals. So if you want to turn this into, if you want to feel like this is a buyer's market, go after those homes that have been out there for 30, 60, 90 days. Call me. I'll give you a list of them. You can go on Zillow and do the work yourself if you're not ready to talk to me yet. And coincidentally, if you're a seller and you want to make it a seller's market, make sure your home is in the best condition possible. Make sure it's decluttered, make sure it's clean, make sure all those projects that you put off for years and years are finally completed, because the market will reward you if you put a quality product on the market. And those are the houses that we're seeing sell in a week to 2 weeks. So if you're a seller, you can create a seller's market for yourself. And if you're a buyer, you can create a buyer's market for yourself, which I think is really interesting right now, because that gives the client, the individual, the consumer a lot more control than they've had in recent history. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, drop a question in the comment and I'll be sure to answer it. What's the average time on market for homes right now? I would say the average time on market right now, it feels like homes are either selling in 10 days or they're selling in 2 months. I would say the last time I looked at the stats, the average days on market was like 47, which was up from 41 the last time I had looked. I'm really curious as we go through the spring, and this is a statistic that I'm going to be watching, is how high do the average days on market get, because that's what really determines if this is a buyer's market or a seller's market. If you get the average days on market, if that starts to tick up, then we are definitely trending towards a buyer's market. What are the most popular towns or areas to move to in Northern Michigan? That's a great one. We help a lot of people, so I feel like we are qualified to tell you what we are seeing. Obviously, Petoskey is always popular. Traverse City is always popular. Gaylord is getting more and more popular. I'm having more and more people consider Gaylord, mainly because there is still a lot of bang for your buck there. Now, when you drive around Gaylord right now, there's trees down everywhere, and it looks a little bit sad. But we've had a couple of listings there that have had a ton of interest. We've sold a few houses there already this year, and I think the fact that we're selling a lot of houses in Gaylord from an hour away shows just how much demand there is for that town. So Traverse City, always popular. Petoskey, always popular. Gaylord's sort of an up-and-comer. As we get closer to summer, you're going to start to see the quintessential resort towns like Harbor Springs, Boyne City, Charlevoix, Elk Rapids. You're going to start to see those gain in popularity also. My friend Ken said, Gino, thank you for your help today. Looking forward to a visit in the near future. Yeah, Ken is actually somebody that I've gotten into contact with this week. He's watched the channel for a while. It sounds like he's looking for a home in northern Michigan. I had the opportunity to check out a couple for him, and he's come up here soon. So again, one of my favorite things in the world to do is meet somebody who has been following me on YouTube, and then you obviously get to meet them in person and show them some houses, grab a cup of coffee, get lunch, whatever. So Ken, thank you for your support, and I'm glad you're here. How are the rising interest rates affecting buyers here? That is a question I received. I made a list. I've got 20, 30, 40 questions that I'm going to go through depending on how much time we have. Um, the interest rates aren't, I would say the interest rates are, first of all, they're starting to come down. It's not dramatic enough to write home about, but they're certainly not going up. And I know we've got the tariffs, we've got a lot of economic uncertainty. Right now, it feels like and also I think they've been high enough for long enough that I think buyers have just decided or accepted that this is just how they are now. So my friend Nate Granada, Nate is another great real estate agent over in Charlevoix, young guy doing a heck of a job. So thanks for tuning in, Nate. I hope you're taking notes so you can rip off my lives and do them yourself. So thanks for being here, Nate. What are the most popular? They worded this wrong. Here's what I think they're trying to ask. What's the difference between living in Traverse City versus Petoskey? That is a great question. And this is a question that I get asked maybe once a day, maybe not once a day, but certainly a few times a week. The biggest difference is, how do you want your lifestyle? And I can't tell you how many people, it seems like it's so common that when somebody's relocating here and they've got schools are important to them, or the hospital's important to them, or jobs, or, just having some form of action. Here's how I determine which one's better for you. If you want all the amenities, you want to feel like you're still in a bigger city, if you want more options for dining, for schools, for just living life, and you want to be around more people, maybe being close to the airport's important to you, pick Traverse City. And that's usually how it goes. If you want a more laid back resort vacation type feel, then you're probably going to like Petoskey. Petoskey is quite a bit smaller than Traverse City. And look, I've sold people from YouTube in both places, and I really enjoy helping them discover which one's right for them, because I don't have to, I'm not selling anything. I just show them both lifestyles, take them to both towns, give them a tour, and something clicks and they know which one they want to pick. So one of my favorite things to do is when people come and look, I think Ken might be doing this. When they come here, we spend one day touring Traverse City and then one day touring Petoskey. And also, they're only an hour and a half apart. So it's not like if you pick one, you can never go to the other one. I spend a lot of time. I live in Petoskey. I spend a lot of time in Traverse City. They've got great restaurants. Petoskey also has great restaurants, just two quality lifestyles. And I feel like if you get to the point when you're picking between Petoskey and Traverse City, it's like picking, two of the best anything. So you're really in a fortunate spot. And it really, again, it comes down to early in my career. So the Petoskey versus Traverse City question has been something I've been dealing with my entire career. And it used to be when I was younger, before the internet was, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but before the internet was more developed, people would almost, if they were picking between Petoskey and Traverse City, they would almost always pick Traverse City, because Traverse City hadn't gotten so much busier than here. Amazon wasn't as prevalent as it is. They had a mall. They still have a mall there, but the mall was certainly a lot more happening than it is now. And it was just a little bit slower here. But since the advent of, the internet's everywhere, and now Amazon, nobody really goes to the mall, for the last 5 years, everybody, until pre-COVID, everybody picked Petoskey because they wanted a slower pace of life. They wanted less hustle and bustle. But now it does seem like, given the fact that there are so many more homes available in Traverse City than Petoskey, it feels like the momentum's turning more towards Traverse City. The biggest issue we have in Petoskey is that there are so few homes for sale, which makes the premier downtown, well taken care of, nice home, nice neighborhood. Those houses are getting so expensive just because there's so much demand, mainly because there's only a couple of them. So that's definitely something we're dealing with. Also, there's a lot of places in between. I had somebody that was looking in Petoskey. They ended up looking in Southern Michigan. They ended up looking out of state for a little bit. They came back and thought they wanted to be in Traverse City. and they ended up buying in Elk Rapids. And Elk Rapids, I think, is a great up and coming town. You've got the chain of lakes there, you've got Lake Michigan, you've got a great downtown, you've got the Foundry Bar and Grill. And I really think that's something that makes Northern Michigan special is there's just so many different places to live here. And all of them aren't really that far apart. I mean, Elk Rapids is a half hour to Traverse City, a half hour to Charlevoix, 45 minutes to Petoskey. So when you live in these towns, it's not like you're in a silo and you can never leave. It's really, it's really you're living in the region and that's just where you sleep at night. Oh, this is another one I should have tied in. What are some underrated towns people should consider? Elk Rapids is definitely one of them. After spending some time there, and I drive through Elk Rapids all the time, I like Elk Rapids. I think there's a lot of bang for your buck there. Just off the cuff, and look, I studied a little bit for these questions, but a lot of these are the same questions I have I talk to clients about every day. Underrated towns people should consider: Elk Rapids, Ellsworth, East Jordan, Sheboygan, Indian River. It really depends on what area you want and what lifestyle you want. If you came to me and said, I should do a live about this or do a video about like, this is the most expensive version of this lifestyle. This is the most affordable. So like, I would say the most of, like Boyne City, the most expensive, East Jordan, more affordable. And just like that dynamic. So if you were to tell me what you were looking for, I could tell you which town is the most expensive version of that and which town is the most affordable version of that. And you might be surprised how many similarities they have. Because if you look at like East Jordan versus Charlevoix or Boyne City, they're all on Lake Charlevoix. Obviously, East Jordan's on a little bit less desirable part of Lake Charlevoix. East Jordan's got great restaurants, great coffee shops, but not to the extent that Charlevoix and Boyne City do. So that would be a really fun exercise. Are there still affordable lakefront homes in Northern Michigan? Yeah. I mean, affordable is relative. I think, 500,000 and below for a waterfront home in this day and age. And every time I say the words $500,000 and affordable in the same sentence, somebody roasts me in the comments, but we're all friends. Let's just say 500 below is affordable, specifically for waterfront. There are still many of those options available, and they're on Great Lakes, not the Great Lakes, although sometimes they are, but Great Lakes, Black Lake, Paradise Lake, Otsego Lake, Carp Lake, Susan Lake. There's Gaylord has a bunch of lakes. So there's definitely places to get on the water that are affordable that look, whether when you're on a jet ski or a boat or tubing your grandkids around or laying on the beach or whatever, most of the time you're not going to care if you're on Lake Charlevoix or one of the less expensive lakes. So lakefront is lakefront. And I think if you're able, I always say, if you're able to live on the lake, if you're lucky enough to live on the lake, you're lucky enough. Where do most people buy vacation or second homes in this area? Yeah, absolutely. I would say the hotspots for vacation or second homes. If you look in the Traverse City area, you're starting to look at Leland, Suttons Bay, Northport. If you come over here, obviously Harbor Springs, Walloon Lake, Bay Harbor, great resort community. Look, if you're looking for a lot of bang for your buck, obviously I grew up there, so I'm a little bit biased, but I like the Sheboygan, Indian River, Ottaway, Wolverine area. I just sold a house to a friend of mine on the Sheboygan River for $400,000. And if you're not familiar with the Sheboygan River, you can go to Mackinac Island. You can really go for anywhere in the world from there. You can go to Mackinac Island. You can go under the Mackinac Bridge. You can go into Mullet Lake, Burt Lake, Crooked Lake. I mean, the boating possibilities are endless. And to think for that amount of money, and the house was great. They just caught the seller at the right time and they got a tremendous deal. And I hope they don't mind if they're watching. I apologize if you didn't want me to share that, but it's going to close soon anyways. But I mean, those are still, we hear about how expensive and how little bang for your buck you get in Northern Michigan sometimes, but there's still deals like that out there. I mean, if you think you get a house that you can move into, now they're going to update it because they want to, but you're going to update most houses you move into because you want to, but they're going to get to move in there, hit the summer, hit the peak time to move into a waterfront home. They're going to get to enjoy the summer on the water. And I think, again, that is a great way to live in Northern Michigan and something you can't do everywhere. You can't live on a river in a lot of places. And that's something that Northern Michigan has to offer. And also I'm a huge fan of getting my clients deals. And this is the time when those deals are out there and who knows how long they're going to last, but they're here today. Okay, I've got a series of buying and selling questions coming up next. What's the biggest mistake you see buyers make in Northern Michigan? I would say I don't know if this is a mistake, but I do think a lot of people, and look, maybe I'm like this when I buy stuff, but I think a lot of people have a little bit of unrealistic expectations. And to be honest, that's why I started this channel was I got to thinking like I would have a call, or I would have a series of calls with people, and the same types of questions would be coming up, or the same, we still run into the same hurdles. And I thought, what if I started making content that people could watch? That way they became more educated. That way, by the time they decided they were ready to buy, they would know exactly what's going on in the market. And I do think that's helped. I think a lot of these videos have helped people understand exactly what is going on in Northern Michigan. I will say a couple of things. Unrealistic expectations. I think that's always going to be it. I think that's just a human trait. I would say being here's the biggest mistake. If you want to buy a home in Northern Michigan, now I don't know if this is like, I know a lot of the advice I give you is can go across the board. Whether you're buying a house in Northern Michigan or buying a house in Florida, California, it holds true across the board. If you're buying in Northern Michigan or any other area with a lot of demand and low inventory, if you're not treating the process like a full-time job, you're going to get beat by people who are. And what I mean by that is I always tell people, they'll call me and say, I'm not in a hurry. And my favorite thing to say back to them is, but you're going to keep getting beat by people that are in a hurry. Meaning if you look at buying a house in Northern Michigan, like running a race, and you're not in a hurry, if you're in any race and you're not in a hurry, there are people in that race that are in a hurry, and they're going to continue to beat you. So I always tell people, until you're ready to get on the ball and treat this like a full-time or part-time job, it's better to sort of just watch from the sidelines, because you're going to be frustrated and you're going to continue to get beat by people that are taking it seriously. So I'm here to help you at whatever stage you're in, but until you're at the point where you're ready to go, ready to buy something, it's hard to enter the race and hope to be competitive. And that's just something I tell people almost on a daily basis. What should sellers do to make their home stand out in this market? We talked about this a little bit earlier. The best thing a seller can do, whether it's this market or any market, to make their home stand out is put it in the best way possible. Clean it up, make sure just my friend Jim just commented, it distracted me for a second. Jim, I'll get to you in a second. I'm glad you're having a lot of fun fly fishing. Make sure the house is clean. Make sure all the list of repairs that you've been meaning to do, you get those done. Because when I walk through a house with a buyer, they can tell, and I can tell almost immediately if the house has been taken care of. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a buyer tell me that if they didn't take care of the stuff they can see, they probably didn't take care of the stuff they can't see. And that's just a really tough first impression to get over with a buyer. So um, this is something I've been telling people a lot. It's a lot easier to maintain your home along the way than it is to decide you're going to sell the next 90 days. And suddenly you've got to redo the roof for 40 grand or 30 grand. You've got to, fix the windows that are old. You've got to fix the appliances that don't work. That stuff along the way, of course, is a pain in the neck. Of course, is expensive, but don't put yourself in a position where you're ready to sell, and now all of the big issues in your house are at the end of its economic life, and suddenly you're having to put your house on the market in a subpar way. How competitive is it to buy a home in the summer versus the winter? Well, it's a lot less, especially this winter. It was a lot less competitive to buy a house this winter than it will be this summer, just because there's so few people looking. People always ask me when's the best time of year to buy a house, and I always tell them the best time is when you're ready, willing, and able to buy the house. If you're just looking in a vacuum at what the best time of year, I think it's the spring. I think it's when you see the most houses that come on the market. And look, I think from a timing standpoint, you get a better deal typically in the fall than you do the spring. But would you rather buy a house in the spring and pay a teeny bit more and get to enjoy it all summer, or buy a house in the fall just to get ready for winter? So if you're looking for just a sheer bargain, maybe if you already live in Northern Michigan and you're just looking for the best bang for your buck from a timing standpoint, then I would tell you the fall. If you're relocating to Northern Michigan, I think buying in the spring makes a lot of sense, because what a better way to start your life in Northern Michigan than heading into the summer season, which Northern Michigan specifically, is arguably one of the best places on the planet in June, July, and August. I had a couple of investment questions. I thought this would be worthwhile in case if anybody's watching this because maybe they're thinking about buying a short-term rental in Northern Michigan, or because they want a short-term rental, rent their house they're going to buy in Northern Michigan, or maybe you already own a house in Northern Michigan and you're thinking about short-term renting it. I had a longtime client of mine call us this week because you probably know we own a short-term rental management company, and he was ready to put it in there for a few weeks out of the year just to make a little extra income, and it worked out well for him. So is Northern Michigan a good place to invest in short-term rentals or Airbnbs? The short answer is no. Unless you own a home already that you've had forever, it doesn't make sense to buy a short-term rental in Northern Michigan right now. The prices are too high, the interest rate's too high, there's too much demand. My friend that I just mentioned a minute ago, he owns a house on Crooked Lake, which is a nice little lake just outside of Petoskey, very popular. It's on the Inland Waterway, which connects Crooked, Burt, Mullet, Sheboygan River, which I mentioned earlier also. And we looked the houses that were available, and this does not count times that the owners blocked out for them to use. There was a 70% occupancy rate on Crooked Lake in July and August, meaning for the houses that were available, 30% of those nights weren't booked, which I think is incredible. Now, you're not always going to get 100%, so it's not 30%, is probably more like 20%, but that is a very nice lake to have vacancies in July and August for short-term rentals when there's so much demand. I would say pre-COVID, it made a lot of sense to buy a short-term rental in Northern Michigan. The prices are so low, the interest rates are so low, the supply was so low. Now all three of those things are working against you. So from surely an investment standpoint, I don't think it makes any sense to buy a short-term rental in Northern Michigan. And I used to say, unless there's some one-off house out there that I haven't heard of or haven't ran the numbers for, but I can't think of a single house unless you're buying it under market value from a friend or something like that, that you can buy a house today and have it make sense, because we run these numbers all the time for people because we're in that business. But if you own a house in Northern Michigan and you're not quite ready, you're not using it a lot, but you're not quite ready to sell it, I think short-term renting is a great option, specifically if your taxes are low because you've owned it forever, you don't have a mortgage, you're not hoping to take over the world. I think in those instances, it makes a lot of sense to short-term rent the home, um, more as a way to just keep it a little bit longer than maybe you would have otherwise, but just to buy a house. And I wish this wasn't the case, because I think we could sell a lot more houses if it made more sense. But right now, short-term rentals to buy, in my opinion, just do not make a ton of sense. This is another question along those lines. We group these questions. We went through all the questions and we grouped them into different segments. So this is along the lines. How can buyers know if a property has a good rental potential? Ask us. The same way we'll give you a free market analysis on your home, we'll give you a free analysis on your rental property. I would say what I just told you a second ago is having a paid off house that you've owned for a while. Every house in Northern Michigan will rent well. That's not the hard part. It's do the numbers make sense for you? So I think the best thing to do is look at what we think the average daily rate could be multiplied by the occupancy, and that will give you, you take our fees or the fees that are associated with it out, and that will give you your number of how much money you would make. And it's up to you to decide if that is something you'd like to do or not. What's it really like to live in Northern Michigan year round? Weather, lifestyle, et cetera. That's a great question. I'm glad somebody asked that. I think living in it's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Living in Northern Michigan, I know some people that hate living in Northern Michigan year round and they feel like they're stuck here. And if they could afford to leave, they would. I personally love the four seasons of Northern Michigan. I think the summer might be the most underrated. Sorry, I think summer might be the most overrated portion of the most overrated season in Northern Michigan. Now, maybe it's because I'm so busy or what have you, but I think the fall is great. I think fall and winter are so underrated. It is beautiful. The local summer, which happens right after Labor Day, where everybody goes home, but the weather is still nice, I think is a tremendous time of year. Northern Michigan with the fall colors are beautiful. It brings people here. You've got the pumpkin patches, you got Pond Hill Farm, you've got all of those sort of things. And then as the doctor just said, you go right into snowboarding, and we had a lot of fun skiing and snowboarding this year. We went, for us, a lot with still a busy schedule and my son's in school, but and I also felt like we weren't prepared for how good it was going to be. So we're definitely going to be ready for that next year. Also, I want to show you guys something. I was downstate at Boyne Country Sports. I was in Grand Rapids last weekend, and Boyne Country Sports had like a big screen TV in the background, and it had the Victor run on it. And I asked them, I said, hey, where do you guys just have like a live feed for that? And they're like, no, it's on YouTube. And they were like, yeah, this is up in Boyne. Like, they didn't know who I was, but I was in Grand Rapids, and they're like, yeah, we were up in, this is up in Boyne there. That's where our ski hills are. And I said, yeah, I go to Boyne every week, 3 times a week. And I didn't even know there was a Boyne country down there. So let me share this screen with you, but you can actually go on, if you look up Victor Glacier Cam, this is, hopefully you can see it. Let me blow this up so you can see it, so you don't have to see me. This is the last, this is so funny, but this is the last ski run open on this hill. And I guess they're running the lady that was working at the store. Also, if you're ever in the Grand Rapids area and you want to look at ski gear, I think they have the best Boyne Country Sports out of all the Boyne Country Sports I've been to is in Grand Rapids. It's brand new. They had a ton of stuff. The people are super nice. But anyways, they had a big screen, like a huge big, like a 20-foot big screen behind the counter. And it was a Sunday, so there were actually people going down the hill. And I got to talk to the lady. And if you're familiar with Boyne Mountain, that little, if you look at the tree, you can't see my cursor, but if you look at the tree underneath that branch, that's the Eagle's Nest. That's like a little, like a bar. You go up there and get a drink or coffee or hot chocolate, and then walk past there. That's how you get to the Sky Bridge. So this is a pretty, and these condos, hotel rooms right here. If you could see past that, if you could see to the right of the screen, you would see that that's like the little village at Boyne Mountain. So yeah, just go to YouTube, look up the Victor Cam at Boyne, Victor Glacier Cam. They're going to try to stay open until the end of May. Every Saturday I say I'm going to go, and then I get busy showing houses or meeting a client, so I don't get to, but they're doing some kind of deal right now where you can get a pass to go down the Victor run, and then some 9 holes of golf for like some amount of money with some deal, I guess. So I think that'd be super cool. And again, that's something that makes Northern Michigan so special, is in what other area can you snowboard or ski and golf in the same day? And I think that's just incredible. And shout out to Boyne for doing that. So I hope they make it till the end of May. At this point, they're just living on the base because it's too warm here to make any snow. And I don't know. When I was watching it Sunday, I probably stood there for 5 or 10 minutes watching to see if I could see anybody I knew. But there was 10, 20 people going down it. They all had snow pants on, but didn't have coats on or whatever. So super interesting. Frank V says, totally agree with you, Gino, about summer being overrated. I love spring and fall. I agree. I understand a lot of people can only come here in the summertime, which makes all the sense in the world. And it's beautiful. Look, if you have a boat or enjoy the water or have a house up here, Northern Michigan is super special in the summertime, which is why Northern Michigan is Northern Michigan. But I will say it's busy. And I do think Frank V says, I have to go now. Have a good night. Going fishing now in the rain. All right, Frank, it has been raining all day here. And I was all over Northern Michigan. I started the morning in Kewadin looking at a house for a client. Then I was up in Sheboygan on the river with a client. And then we've got a new little listing in a small town called Millersburg, which it's just east of my house I own over there. So I've been all over the world today, and it rained every step of the way. And I'm talking about my windshield wipers were on the highest setting rain. So hopefully that means we're going to get some beautiful green weather coming up. And at some point we got to get some nice weather because it's been cold. We had like one day where it was 70 and then it was cold after that. So guys, feel free to drop any questions you might have, anything you want to talk about, anything that's on your mind. These are just curated questions that I've been asked through social media, through some of the comments. I thought that it'd be worthwhile to spend some time going through questions. And if you're watching this live, thank you for joining me. If you're watching this on the replay, drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you do so. It means a lot to me. We've really grown the channel over the years. We're at almost 1,600 subscribers. Super excited to get to 2,000. And we couldn't do this without you. And there's a huge team behind me that helps make these videos. So it's not just me. You're supporting everyone, and it means a lot to us. So what's the first step to buying a home in Northern Michigan? I would say you're doing it. I would say the first step to buying a home in Northern Michigan is checking out my YouTube channel. Now I'm half kidding. It's starting to get educated. It's looking at, my website, Zillow, Realtor, Homes.com, all the websites do a good job of this. Just go on there and start seeing what homes cost. Start figuring out what areas are important to you, what budget you want to stay in, how close to the hospital you want to be, what schools matter. Just start doing research. Make a list of the things that are most important to you, and ask me. chances are, if you have a question about something that has to do with living in Northern Michigan, we've made a video about it over the years. Just start doing research, and I think that's a great way to determine um, which areas are right for you, and then start looking at your budget. Make sure you've got your taxes done. Call a realtor, hopefully me. If it's not me, one of the other great realtors in Northern Michigan. Find out what lender they prefer to use, and get pre-approved. Start getting educated. Start getting pre-approved, and then start looking at houses. I'm a huge fan of people. I know it's hard because a lot of people are relocating here from far away, and you have to make the trips worthwhile. But if you're within striking distance, or it's easy for you to get here, you have the means or the ability or the resources to come here, just come and drive around. Come stay at the town. Come stay at a hotel in the town. Check out the neighborhoods. Eat at the restaurants. Figure out exactly where you want to live. Now, if you're familiar with Northern Michigan, um, then that saves you a step. Kimberly is asking, is TC expensive to live? Yes and no. There are parts of TC that are very expensive. There are parts of TC that are very affordable. And what I think, so keep bumping the mic. What I like, Kimberly, what I like about Northern Michigan, what I like about Traverse City, excuse me. If you go 10 minutes outside of Traverse City, you start bringing places like Grawn, Interlochen, Maple City. That's a little further out, but there's a lot of places within striking distance of Traverse City that are very affordable. Now, I just showed one of my clients 19, 20 houses in Traverse City, and it amazed me over a couple of days, not one day. I'm not that crazy. Over a couple of days, and I was surprised how many of those houses had been on the market for a little while, did not have offers on them. So what I think, Kimberly, is keep watching that Traverse City market, because I have a feeling over the next couple of months, maybe even into the fall, there's going to be some values there, because it seems like their inventory, and I watch this closely, but it seems like their inventory is starting to stack up a little bit. And I think if you're flexible with what you're looking for, and you pick your spots, meaning you go after those houses that have been out there for a little while, I think there's going to be some deals to be had. So that's a great question. I know you and I believe have spoken in the past. If this is the same Kimberly that spells her name that way, so email me. We can talk about it. I know we got a call scheduled, so we can talk about it a little bit further on the call. But no, that's a good question, and I do think there's going to be some opportunities in the Traverse City area. How important? I have to go. I promise we'll talk next week. Jim has been standing me up for a very long time, and I'm starting to think he doesn't like me anymore. So I'm glad he said that. All right, Jim, have fun. Catch some fish. What are how important? Wait, what's the do I need? Okay, here's the practical advice. I want to make sure before we run out of time, we might go over tonight. So if you guys don't have anything going on, actually, I wanted to mention this in the beginning. I know the Pistons are on right now, and they've got a must-win game. So if you have to bail to watch the Pistons, feel free. I'd rather you do so. You can watch this on replay. Let's hope they get a win tonight. It'd be awesome to see them go to the next round. I made a promise to myself, if they go to the next round, I'm going to make sure I go to a game. So go Pistons. And if anybody's watching this, and if anybody's watching the Pistons and watching this, if you want to drop the comment on the score, it'd be super helpful. How much do I need for a down payment up here? Now that really depends on a number of things. One, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can get away with very little down. If you're a VA buyer, meaning you're a veteran, very little down. So anywhere from 0% to 20%, depending on your situation. Again, reach out to me. I'll connect you to a local lender. I often can tell you, I typically don't give lending advice besides which lenders to call. If you call me and give me your situation, I can give you a pretty good idea of what you're going to qualify for and what you should expect for a down payment. But I would say anywhere from 5, 10, 20% down, sometimes less, depending if it's your first time. How do I convince my wife to move to Petoskey? There's two ways. One, you get her on the phone with me, and I can certainly help with that. I'm half kidding. Bring her here. I don't know what your wife likes to do, but bring her here in the middle of July, where it's 70 degrees every day. The wind's blowing. There's tons of stuff to do. It's beautiful. We'll go on a deck. We'll have dinner. We'll have some wine. I probably won't, but you'll have some wine, and she'll just decide this is where she needs to live. 9-6 Knicks. All right, Nate, thanks. It's awfully early, but let's hope the Pistons rally. What are the hidden costs? We're going to get into some financial questions. What are the hidden costs of owning a home up north? The hidden costs are all the stuff you're going to buy to have fun: the four wheelers, the kayaks, the mountain bikes, the gym memberships, all the stuff you're going to have to be involved, all the dinners out at Chandler's, all the you know apples at Frisky's Apple Orchard, Frisky's Market, all the stuff that you're not thinking about. No, um, there's not really any hidden cost of owning a home in northern Michigan that you wouldn't have anywhere outside of snow plowing in the winter, that sort of stuff, making sure you have snow tires on your car, just the stuff that is associated with winter is really the only heating bills. Yeah. I was just about to say anything that's associated with winter might be a hidden cost because if your house isn't well insulated or it's older, you're going to have some high heating costs in the wintertime, which is unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. But when I'm often asked what's some, I've been asked this more than once, so I'm familiar with answering it. It's one of the biggest hidden costs is all the stuff you have to spend money on. The tickets for the wristbands for your kids at the fair so they can go on all the rides. Those add up after a while. What are typical utility costs in northern Michigan homes? It's a great question. This is something that comes up often. I don't know if there's anything typical. The typical is they're what they are. They're not anything higher or anything lower than in other areas. A question you should ask if you're really budget oriented and the cost of owning the house really matters to you, and this is something buyers ask all the time, and I have no problem with it. Just ask for a copy of the utility bills. I think the best way to find out what it costs to own a home is to look at what the current owner's paying, and that's a great way to do that. I have to pull up my next list of questions. What should I buy land and build or buy an existing home in northern Michigan? I would tell you this is another good question. This I meant for this one to be at the top of the list, but unless you have a very big budget or you're able to build the home yourself, I would tell you buying an existing home in most cases is the way to go. Shoot, for a couple of reasons. One, I would say there's three main reasons that I would buy a house versus unless you have a giant budget. Now, if you have a big budget, I'm talking two, three, four, $5 million, build your dream house and invite me over to see it because I want to see it. If you don't have a giant budget and you don't have the temperament to deal with the building process, and look, we have relationships with the best builders in northern Michigan. One of them, their office is directly above where I'm sitting right now. Glenwood, look up their website, one of the best builders in northern Michigan. They build incredible homes, but they are expensive. So assuming you don't have a giant budget and you don't have the desire to build a house, I think buying a pre-existing house makes more sense than building a house for a couple of reasons. One, the cost. It's cheaper to build a house. I'm sorry, it's cheaper to buy a house. And the three reasons that I would buy a pre-existing house versus building right now is one, a lot less expensive. Two, a lot less variables. Three, timing. I had a client who had a friend that was building a very modest house, and they thought just the excavating budget for, like excavating the land around the house was going to be $25,000. It ended up being $100,000. So before they even started building, they were already set. And I don't know the story. Maybe there was something that I don't know about what happened, but that is 74 times the budget. That is $75,000 over budget before they even started building their house. And I do think at some point in everybody's life, they should build a house once. I don't know if I'm going to change that philosophy in a couple of years when the building costs just remain astronomically high. In the last, I would say 5 years we'll say the last 5 years, we've sold 500 homes or 400 homes. One person that has worked with us has built a house, and they were somebody that just sold their company, had a massive budget, bought a beautiful lot with a great lake view in Harbor Springs, and they built a dream house. But most people are deciding, builders won't even talk to you for less than, yeah, the builder above us, Glenwood, and they're a great builder, and I should have Jim on the show sometime, but he told me last summer that they had 5 houses under construction that were $1,000 a square foot or more, and all 5 of them were over budget. So thinking about $1,000 a square foot, that is a significant amount of money. That's a nice shirt. Ian is saying that because when we joined or I joined Real, Ian bought me this Lululemon t-shirt and had some underground embroiderer screen printer printed. So this is a Real shirt. That's the brokerage we're with now. That's the company we're brokered by, and this is an unofficial Real shirt. So thank you, Ian, for that. How do I choose? How do I choose the right agent in Northern Michigan? I would tell you to interview us. I'm not for everybody, just like no realtors for everybody. And I would tell you, I'd be lying if I said every interview I had ended up with me working with the client. Sometimes we're just not a good fit. Uh, I think what's really cool about this profession is I get to pick who I get to work with. And I want to work with people that I'm going to enjoy working with. And you should work with people that you're going to enjoy working with. Um, and just because you and I don't resonate or what have you, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with either one of us. It's just not everybody is for everyone. Now we've sold a lot of houses, we've helped a lot of different people. I'm qualified to say I feel like we're capable of helping you through your process. But we're not for everybody. So make sure you interview a couple of agents, and it can be Zoom interviews. Look, and maybe that's what you're doing now. Maybe you're watching this YouTube video because you're interviewing me without interviewing me. And if that's the case, I'd love to have a formal introduction or formal interview. Look at reviews. Look, if you have a friend that lives up here, ask them who they like. A lot of the business I get is from people that I've either sold a house to or know me from being in Northern Michigan that say, hey, call Gino. He does a lot of business. And that's just how it goes. Easy. Call Nate or Gino. Only call. Yeah. Call Nate first. If he doesn't answer, then call me. What are the value areas up there right now? DR, what do you mean by that? What are the value? Are you asking? Okay, I think I know what you're saying. What are the areas to get the best deal right now? I would say they're everywhere. I think the value areas right now are houses that have been on the market for a while. And I still think east of I-75, ton of value over there. It's a little bit different lifestyle. It's a great lifestyle in the summer. I think east of 75 is underrated in the summer. The areas between Petoskey and Traverse City, Elk Rapids, Quaden, Alden, those areas, those are great places. Norwood, that's a little one. Those are great places to look for homes because they're a little bit less convenient to live in, which gives you more bang for your buck. Gaylord, Elmira, that Gaylord region, I think Gaylord is still one of the best buys. Gaylord, you look at Johannesburg to go over a little bit, you go over to Elmira. The other way, Grayling. We've got a house. I got a listing in Roscommon from somebody that called us to help them sell their house. It's on like 15 acres, beautiful home. It's listed at 475. That house would be 800,000 here. So those areas are definitely out there. I think somebody gave me this question because they know this is my favorite question. What can a local agent help me with that a downstate agent can't? Like a million things. If you live in Northern Michigan and you want to list your house with your friend that lives in Ann Arbor or Detroit, that makes sense. I get it. It's fine. Once in a while, I'll list a house downstate for a friend of mine. I've got a condo listed in Ann Arbor right now for a really, really good friend of mine. In terms of buyer's agents, that's what's a little trickier. I wouldn't go to Metro Detroit. If you called me and said, I want to sell a $10 million house, I want to buy a $10 million house, but you have to represent me as a buyer's agent in Metro Detroit. Maybe for that, I would say yes. But, I'm half joking. I think it's really hard to represent a buyer in an area that you're 2 or 3 hours from, because first of all, it's super inefficient for you, because here's what's going to happen. And I tell this to my buyers. A house is going to come on the market at 7:00 on a Thursday night. And are you really going to drive 3 hours, interrupt your day on a Friday to come to Northern Michigan to show this house? Everybody can run their business however they want to. I think that makes next to no sense. And that's why I think you should work with an agent in Northern Michigan. I think the worst agent in if you're looking to buy a house in Northern Michigan, the worst agent in Northern Michigan might be better than the best agent downstate, just sheerly from getting you in the house and making sure you're handled the right way. What's the difference between lakefront, lake access, and shared frontage? I would say it's in the names. Lakefront is you own the lakefront. You're going to pay top dollar, but you own your piece of waterfront. Lake access is probably going to be, lake access can mean one of two things. Lake access could mean you're close to a public access, which, hey, that is the best way to do it because you're going to pay a lot less for the house and you're still going to get access to the lake, although you're going to have to share it with many more other people. Uh, Lake access or shared frontage. Shared frontage is great because there's a lot of developments or associations that have 10 or 20 houses in a subdivision, but they've got a 200-foot stretch of beautiful waterfront. I'm about to list a house in Indian River that it's on a golf course, and the owners have a boat slip in the marina, which they drive their golf cart to. I think shared access is great because you get a legal right to the property. You're not sharing it with a million people. And typically you're not paying top dollar because you don't actually own private waterfront. How do I compete with cash offers in popular areas? How do I compete with cash offers in popular areas? I think the best way to do that is by making sure the terms of your contract are clean, by making sure you're offering the highest price you're willing to pay, and then also make sure you're working with a local lender. Now, something a lot of people don't know is if you're putting enough down, your lender can sometimes do what's called an appraisal waiver, which makes your mortgage offer almost turn into cash. Now, I know Ian's watching, and I hope everybody doesn't run to him and hope they get an appraisal waiver because it's not guaranteed and it's honestly more rare than not. But if you're putting enough down, there's a likelihood that that's going to happen, and that's going to completely strengthen your offer. And I do think working with a local lender matters. Look, we just had highest and best on a house that we had listed. The two highest offers, one was mortgage, one was cash. We ended up going with the mortgage offer because they gave the seller more time more possession after closing, and they paid a higher amount of money. Specifically in Northern Michigan, specifically in the higher price ranges, if somebody's pre-approved with a reputable bank, they're likely going to get the money versus a cash offer that's obviously also going to get the money, but some sellers just aren't willing to give these huge discounts just because somebody has cash. Is it better to buy a home in a small town or in the woods? That's a great question. It really depends what you want. Depending on how small the town or how deep in the woods. What's nice about Northern Michigan is even in the woods, you're still close to a lot of things. And sometimes even in the small town, you still have to drive to some of the bigger towns to do your bulk grocery shopping. So I really think that's a personal question and something that we can talk about when the time comes if you decide to call us. Those are the extent of the questions I have. We're coming up on about an hour. If there's anything you want to talk about, drop a comment. If not, I appreciate you watching. Again, if you think there's somebody in the world that would add value from this or get value from this, share it with them. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to be doing these all throughout the summer. They're going to get better and better as the summer goes because I'm going to be able to report back exactly what is happening in the market. What's up, brother? Hope all is well. Love the live. Thanks, Balin. For all your IT needs, make sure you give my boy Balin a call. He's a good friend of ours, and I appreciate you watching. So yeah, without further ado, if there's nothing else left on your mind, I will be back here next week at 7. Every Sunday at about 1 p.m., we drop a video that's pre-recorded that we have edited. We put a lot of thought behind. So it means a lot for me if you watch those videos. Tell me if there's anything in those videos you want to learn more about. I'd love to help you out. So yes, pray for nice weather. And I hope the next time I see you guys, we have a ton of sun. Have a good night. Go check out the Pistons, and we'll talk soon.